Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Karishma and I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Hubert Silly to our channel today. He's an expert in the field of test prep and admission consulting, not to mention the founder and CEO of the MBA Center. Welcome, Dr. Hubert.
Welcome, Karishma. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Our special guest today is Anna, who is the manager for recruitment and marketing for graduate programs at the John Molson School of Business. She will answer our questions about the school and the graduate programs they offer. Welcome to our channel, Anna. We are very happy to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so let's begin. Let's start with Concordia University and John Molson Business School. So could you tell us something about the history and about the business school, when it was formed and things like that, please?
Yeah, actually, yes. Concordia University used to be two separate colleges, Loyola College and Sir George Williams. And each of these colleges were established for many years, maybe more than 150 years or so. And then about 50 years ago, in 1974, they decided to merge, and then it became Concordia University. As for the John Molson School of Business, we're a pretty large business school in Canada with more than 9,000 students. We're actually celebrating the 20th anniversary of our naming this year. But some of our programs are more than 50 years old, like our MBA program. So quite an established business school in Canada.
Wow. Dr. Hubert, if you have any questions for Anna?
Yes, Anna. So what are the programs offered by John Molson University, John Molson Business School?
Yes, so at the graduate level, we have a Master of Business Administration, so the MBA, which can be done full-time or part-time. We have an MBA in Investment Management, where the students do the CFA, or prepare for the CFA charter while they're doing their MBA. We have an executive MBA for professionals who have more experience, and we have 4 masters. So we have a Master of Science in Finance, in Marketing, in Management, and we also have a Master of Supply Chain Management. And then if you're also interested in the certificates and diplomas, we have graduate certificates in Business Administration, as well as a graduate diploma in Business Administration, which is a 1-year program for international students.
Okay, great. So what is the admission process like, and now for students coming, many of our students come from South America, Europe, and India. So what are the admissions requirements for non-English native speakers?
Mm-hmm. So for the majority of our programs, like especially at the master level, we do require a GMAT score, and then the requirement will vary depending on the program. Typically, we recommend to be above 600 and closer to the average. Our average is typically 640, so the closer or above the average, the better chances of admission on the GMAT side. We require transcripts from the undergraduate degree, typically the equivalent of a 4-year degree, although it depends on the country, of course. And the minimum requirement is the equivalent of a 3.0 on a 4.3 GPA, so it's like a B+ or so. And then we will require some work experience for MBA candidates. So typically minimum 2 years of work experience for the full-time MBA. We don't require work experience for the MBA in Investment Management because it's a bit of a different program. We also don't require work experience for the master's programs or the graduate diplomas. And the executive MBA, we recommend a minimum of 10 years of work experience, but we may consider a candidate as of 5 years or so. And then in addition to the CV, the transcripts, and the GMAT, will require English proficiency tests. It could be either the TOEFL or the IELTS. The TOEFL requirement is a 95 internet-based test with minimum of 20 in each category. The IELTS requirement would be a 7.0 overall with 6.5 in each category. And right now, because of COVID-19, we also accept the Duolingo language test with a minimum requirement of 120. And aside from that, the typical, statement of purpose detailing why they want to get into the program. We'll also ask for letters of reference, 2 or 3, depending on the program. And we may request additional documents if anything needs to be clarified. But it's pretty standard. It's a long process for international students, so our team is happy to stay in touch with the candidates during the process and to help them make sure that it is a smooth application.
Okay, thank you very much. I remember, by the way, that Concordia used to have a partnership with IFG, Institut Français de Gestion, in Paris. Do you still have like partner programs outside outside Canada?
We do have a number of partnerships. I don't know about the partnership you just mentioned specifically, but we are quite an established business schools. Like we're the first business school in Canada to have been parity certified by Women in Governance. We're very established right at the center of Montreal, so it makes it very practical for different businesses to also come. We work closely with the CFA Institute in Montreal and in Toronto as well. So there's a number of partnerships that we leverage to make sure that our students have opportunities to get involved in the business world and to also meet different speakers at different levels. I have to double check about this partnership that you mentioned though, because I'm not entirely sure about that one. But I'm sure if it was established in the past, it's probably something that we would try to maintain.
So tell me, Anna, you mentioned, GMAT, language test, work experience, probably of course GPA, but what are you looking for in candidates, especially? What are the key criteria for you?
So of course, to be able to go through the academic program, we will look at the academic criteria quite closely. But beyond that, we're also looking to make sure that the program is going to be a right fit for the students. So my team, the recruitment team, we will be meeting with many different candidates or exchanging with them to make sure to guide them and to understand what are their career goals, to make sure that, whether it is a Master of Finance or whether it is a MBA, like the program they're applying to is indeed the right one. The different programs are looking for different things. So for example, the more research-based masters might be looking for students who are strongly academically inclined and who are willing to do research and present a thesis and who would have, I guess, appropriate background in the domain or in the field to make sure that they can, stay passionate during the 2 years of that research. The MBA program will be looking a little bit more for, business leaders, people who have the capacity to work well as part of teams. We use a lot of case learning in our methodology. So to be able to work with a team, work on a project, to do presentations. So we'll be looking closely at those communication skills. We're looking ultimately with all of our programs to make sure that students are employable post-graduation. So of course, an aspect of communication, collaboration, leadership, as well as the ability to go through the program academically and to be professional is something that we'd be looking for in every candidate.
Okay. So basically, I just have to go. Okay, sorry, I have to go in my somewhere else. So sorry, I'm moving. So tell me, did you see that I move? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So basically, so what would you say? So you have any question to ask you, Karishma? Go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to talk more about the MBA, the MSc in Finance and MIMs. What are the strengths of these programs? Could you tell us a little bit about those?
Mm-hmm. The Master of Science in Finance and the MBA in Investment Management are two very particular programs. So the Master of Science caters more for students who really want to build an expertise in a specific area in finance. So the first year is course-based. They'll take different classes in research methodology, data analytics, and finance in general, and then they'll take this opportunity to meet with a potential supervisor for their thesis. The second year is spent on the research and preparation of the thesis and working with the supervisor in that topic. So for example, if they're interested in sustainable investments or if they want to become an expert in one area, then they would work in that area for 1 year. So it's very much applied research and almost like project management in a way, because you conduct everything from the research to the application to putting together the project to then presenting it to a board of directors who would then approve your thesis, and then you would graduate. The MBA in Investment Management is a very different program. It's a little bit like a specialized MBA program because we only recruit students who have a strong interest in building a career in finance. So it's a 3-year program, which counts as a full-time course load. So students do typically 3 to 4 courses per term. And every year they prepare for one level of the CFA charter. So the goal would be that at the end of the program, the students would earn their MBA and also have passed all 3 exams of the charter. And then they just need to build the work experience to be awarded the full charter. And so it's very much a program where we integrate the CFA charter materials into our case material so that students can, you know, not just cram the material of like the charter and then pass the exams and then forget about it the following day, but really understand how to use them in a professional context. So 2 very different programs with very different focus, but very, you know, unique applications. And we recruit students, you know, of course, with a strong interest in finance for both programs, but we may recommend one over the other depending on the way the students like to study or what topic they like to study specifically, or what are some of their career goals.
All right. So let's move on to the application process now. What, according to you, what is the relative importance of these various things like the admission test scores, the undergraduate grades, the recommendation letters? How would you, let's say which one and how much importance each one is? I'm so sorry, I got confused. So, what do you think is the relative importance of all of these?
It's all quite important. We look at the admissions process very holistically. So there are different reasons for which we need those admission requirements, and they all weigh a certain way. So there's not one that is stronger than the other. And of course, we recommend students to perform in all of them. If they were to underperform in one area, then obviously we would expect them to compensate in another area. So for example, if somebody had a slightly lower GPA, then they might want to compensate by having a very strong GMAT score or very, you know, relevant work experience. So it depends a lot on you know, the application and the program, and of course the career goals. They're all, I would say, quite equally important, but they shouldn't focus only on one area or the other area. If they feel like a little bit less confident about one area over another, they should contact us, and then we can help them prepare for the application and, you know, give them an honest opinion about what we think you know, they should be working on to improve.
Okay, so right now you mentioned the GMAT prior in a few questions back. So my question is, during this current COVID situation, there's a lot of issues with the GMAT, and some schools have waived it off. Do you have any plans of doing that or anything as such?
Unfortunately, we haven't. Well, it depends on the program, actually. Our regular MBA has been quite strict on the GMAT because actually our number of applications went up since the crisis started. So we've had to maintain you know, quite strict requirements. We do recommend students to do the online GMAT, which can be done up to two times online now. And then, of course, depending on the test center situation, you know, we may accept a GRE. I know that some candidates, for example, in Iran don't have access to GMAT test centers and they don't have access to the online GMAT. In that case, we would accept a GRE instead. In some program cases, we may give a waiver based on certain qualifications, but it would require the rest of the application to be quite competitive. And, you know, for example, for an additional certification, maybe like a CFA level 3, for example, or, you know, maybe a PhD in a very relevant field. So in some cases, we will consider waivers, but I would say 95% of the students will have to take the GMAT to make sure that we can have a good learning environment and maintain our standards.
All right. Dr. Hubert, if you would want to ask any questions.
Yes, so you mentioned that you have an increasing number of applicants, so it applies to all the programs, the MBA only, or the masters? Is it for all the programs or just for some of your programs?
It's been an increase all around. We've seen a sharp increase for MBA in investment management. It's become quite competitive. Our full-time MBA as well, especially in the local market. Obviously, with COVID-19, some students had to defer their application to the following year on the international side, but our numbers remain quite steady and strong. The master's programs as well. So a lot of our programs have a small capacity because we want to make sure to provide a very positive, you know, environment to the students, very collaborative. So by default, we don't tend to accept, you know, 300 students in one program, which is also why it becomes competitive and we can recruit, you know, top candidates from all over the world. It really depends on the program, but I would say for the great majority of our programs, there's been quite an increase. If not stable, then definitely an increase.
Okay. Karishma, maybe?
Yeah.
if you have questions.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think we have much time left. I have a few more questions. Okay, so do most students live on campus or near the school, and what is it like to live there in this area as a graduate student? Montreal, as it is very beautiful. So how is the?
It's definitely a beautiful city, Montreal, and one of the key advantages of living in Montreal is really how affordable the cost of living is compared to other major North American cities. So when we compare even to Canadian cities like Vancouver and Toronto, our cost of living is probably 30 to 40% cheaper in terms of rent. So typically, it may sound funny for a university representative to say this, but I don't recommend our graduate students to stay at the residence. I tend to recommend them to look for an apartment. They can live, downtown or a little bit away from downtown for quite an affordable price, find roommates and really experience the life of the city. I tend to recommend the residences more for like the undergraduate students, because it's a little bit more strict and they have like these one rooms. So I think at a master level, a lot of our students want to experience the city fully and really enjoy it. Concordia is located right downtown at the center of the action. It's a beautiful area that has been really renewed. A lot of nice buildings. Like the whole university is quite new. I think we renovated the John Molson School of Business in 2000 and was it 2010 or so? It was like 10 years ago or so. So the building is almost brand new. And the area itself is a lot, it's very close to the, what's it called, the area where we have festivals. It's a walkable distance to, all the shopping malls. There's a lot of very nice, affordable restaurants around there. Winter is a little bit harsh in Montreal compared to most locations in the world, but, there's a lot to do even in the winter. We have like festivals, we have snow sports or winter sports that students can do. And Montreal is like a large city that feels like a small city where it's very easy to get to know everyone. It's a student city, so by default, it's more affordable, it's more convivial. A lot of our university students will even make friends with other university students because all the universities are more or less in the same area. So it's a very unique experience, a little bit European in a way and a little bit North American in another way.
Oh.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So tell me, Anna, so we mentioned that we have to mention job now. As you know, our students are very worried about the job situation. And that many now don't want to go to America because there's an issue with visa. So the US job market. I know because I talk with many of our Indian students, especially, that Canada and Quebec in particular are very generous in terms of immigration. So can you tell us how it works? Imagine that I come for masters, full-time masters or full-time MBA. How does it work for me to stay for, I don't know, some time to practice what I've learned? So what do the authority allow in Canada?
Mm-hmm. So if you do a graduate program, typically you'll apply for a study permit. And then after you finish your program, you'll be eligible to apply for a post-graduation work permit, which is typically equivalent to the duration of your program and a little bit more. So for example, if you do a 2-year master's or MBA program, you'll have a 2 up to 3 year post-graduation work permit, which allows you to stay in Canada and you can work anywhere in the country. It's not regulated by the province. And the same if you were to do a 1-year graduate diploma, then typically you would have up to 1 year of post-graduation work permit. There's also a lot of, I won't speak much to the immigration programs because I think it's a little bit technical and it changes all the time. So I want to make sure I don't give out weird information, but there are a lot of immigration programs in Canada, like the fast track entry. There's also a programme d'expérience québécoise in Quebec, the PEQ, where students need to have like a degree and then some experience, and then they can apply for immigration. They also need to speak French in that case. So depending on the province where you apply, you may need either English or French. plus a certain amount of experience. I do recommend to contact the embassy for more details about that, because those are very, very strict guidelines, and I want to make sure they have the right information. But the great thing with the post-graduation work permit is that any graduate students who comes to Canada to experience life doesn't have to leave right after finishing their studies. They can experience the job market. We had a booming job market just before COVID-19 started. Now, obviously, it's a little bit more challenging, since everything is basically, people working from home, and, maybe some industries are affected more than others. But we're confident that by the time students come, finish their studies, and then go back into the job market, things will pick back up. And hopefully we'll be back where we were a year back, less than a year back, actually.
Okay, and so how do you help students find jobs at your school? Do you have a career fair? I imagine that you have clubs. You have a consulting club. I imagine whatever, marketing clubs through which they can find jobs. So what are the initiatives that you have? You have probably your coaching department, whatever. So what do you offer, and what do you suggest to students interested in your school?
Absolutely. So in order to secure a really great employment post-graduation, Canadian experience is really important in the Canadian job market. So we tend to recommend students to apply for internships while they're doing the program. And they can do internships either during the summer, or they could also do a co-op internship through our co-op institute. So our co-op institute is basically this huge organization that builds business partnerships with different companies. And then, we train the students to apply for different positions. They will help them with CV review. They will help them with negotiation. They will help them to secure, an internship. And then that internship will be done typically during a term. It could be in the summer, in the fall, or in the winter. If they do the co-op internship, they'll have to apply for a special co-op visa, which allows them to work full-time as part of their studies. But our institute will assist them with that. Another way to apply for internships is through our career management services team. We have a database with more than 900 employers, more than 3,000 job postings, 1,000 of which are, for MBAs or master level, students. So there's a lot of opportunities, and the job database doesn't cover only Montreal. It can cover other areas in Canada as well, particularly Toronto, which is a huge job market, as well as Vancouver, Calgary, and so on. And Career Management Services is also there to coach the students. So we organize different events, whether it is, CV reviews, just coaching in general, international events, or events geared towards international students to understand the Canadian job market. We have, as you mentioned, a big job fair. So every fall, typically we have more than 70 employers that come on campus. And they come, talk about the opportunities available to our students. We also have more than 200 workshops organized by employers on our campus. So then students can come talk to top consulting firms, financial institutions, roles in marketing and tech. We also have startup focused events for small companies to come pitch for venture capitalists, but also, recruit talent. What else? Our career management services is just so active. I recommend to definitely check their Facebook and LinkedIn pages, because every day there's something going on. And even now with COVID-19, they've turned all of their events virtual. So the students do have access to a lot of opportunities to connect. Networking is 80% of the job market in Canada. It's really important to build connections in order to secure opportunities. So what we try to do over the course of their program, whether it's a 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year program, is to make sure they have access to a lot of those opportunities to connect to different panels with top executives, people who come from the HR recruitment, companies to talk about the positions that are available. So a lot of exposure all year long. Pretty much every week something is happening at GMSB.
All right. So, yeah. Students also want to understand the kind of financial aid that the schools offer, right? So could you tell us a bit about any programs and scholarships that students can look out for?
Absolutely. So one advantage of John Molson School of Business is compared to other, top 5 institutions in Canada. So our MBA is actually top 5 in 2 major rankings, The Economist and Bloomberg Business Week. And when you compare it to other top 5 institutions, we're almost half price in terms of the total tuition fee for international students. So that's already a huge advantage. One thing that might be interesting for your students from France is there is an agreement between France and Quebec as for the tuition fee. So students from France would have access to the same tuition cost as Quebec student, which is, I think, approximately $6,000 for a 2-year public program like the MBA or like the master's. And then depending on the program, we also have different scholarships available, which come directly from donors of the university, either graduates or alumni who wish to give back. So these amounts vary every year. They may be as small as $1,000 and as large as $25,000, depending on what we have available then. And we also have in-course awards for top student performance. So students who perform really well in the GPA while being involved in the community. And finally, if for local students, of course, there's financial aid with, the Quebec government. For international students, we may recommend to either get a loan or a line of credit at one of the different banks. That process depends a lot from a bank to another and from a country to another. But one good thing is at least they're not going into major debt with our programs because they are, quite affordable.
Okay. So yeah, Hubert, if you have any questions.
Yeah. So tell me, Anna, do you have an idea of the proportion of the students who stay in Canada after graduation and the percentage of those who finally stay forever?
So post-graduation, I think it's about 93% of our students who remain in Canada right after graduation, especially for the work permit. So I think there's definitely a desire for international students to stay, experience Canada, and sometimes even immigrate. I don't know if we have data about where they are, 5 years back. It may depend if they had a plan to stay, only for a few years and then go back to their country, or if they decided to immigrate. I know the Canadian government has made it very easy for students, especially if they have work experience, to remain in the country and to give them opportunities to stay in the longer term. We have an aging population and a small population compared to a lot of, countries. So I think there's definitely a desire to have more people come in. But I don't have specific statistics as to, past the 3-year mark, if how many of them will stay. But I would assume that the great majority would choose to stay because it's a really great country to be in.
Okay, great. So you know that we help students on test prep and admission. So what are the tips that you have for students who are going to watch this interview and who may decide to apply to your school? So it's still already mid October. So it's imagine that they don't have any GMAT, any TOEFL, nothing is ready yet. So what are the top 3 tips that you have for them in order to help them increase their chance or their odds of success?
Well, I would say one, to definitely get in touch with the recruitment team. Our team is very accessible. Our programs are quite small and we get to know pretty much everyone, as part of the process, as well as how well the students are doing in the program. So I think getting in touch is really important. One, would it be only to make sure that this is indeed, the right program for them and so that we can guide them accordingly. Then I would say if they do meet with us or if they do organize a phone call or anything with us to make sure they have done some basic research beforehand. Obviously, there's so much information available on our website and through the different companies like yours. So I think doing that first step of research and so that when they spend time with us, they can really focus on what they can't find out, like talking about the experience or talking about the things that we might not be able to put into words that really defines what doing an MBA or a master's in Canada might be. I think it's important to use that time accordingly. And third, I would just say to just be themselves. Ultimately, all the universities are looking for candidates that fit well into their program and to make sure that they are the right fit for the students as well. So, you know, not to write essays thinking, okay, this is what the committee wants to read, or not to say something that is untrue and that later we would find out. Because obviously we want to make sure that, again, this is the right program for you, this is the right experience for you. So be genuine in your essays, your application, and make that process like as truthful as possible.
Right. That was a fruitful session. And I'd like to say that I'm very grateful to you for taking the time to answer our queries. You've been a great help, and I trust that new applicants who see the video will feel the same. Thank you, Dr. Hubert, for being a wonderful co-interviewer, and thank you to both. So finally, do you have anything, Dr. Hubert?
Thank you, Now, maybe I will ask Violeta to contact you. She's in charge of something that we call Business School World Series, which is a series of mini events, and we have planned a webinar on Canadian MBAs, because usually people confuse North American MBAs with on the US MBA. So we have a specific seminar on US MBA, on Canadian MBAs. We'd like to invite you, HEC Montreal, and most likely McGill. So hope that we'll have an opportunity to see you again, Anna, later on in November for the Business School World Series.
Great. I'll be looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Both of you. And my dear viewers, thank you for being a part of MBA Center. Please join our channel to see more interviews and keep asking us more questions. Until the next interview, bye-bye and see you.
Thank you.